Hello everybody, how are you? Good? I'm so glad you guys came to my talk instead of the 99.95 talk. It's very good. Don't worry, that talk will repeat, so you'll get to go to it later. So I'm talking about actuarial studies today. I'm actually, as Alison said, I'm actually in a combined law degree. So if you have any law questions, you can ask me afterwards. But I'm mainly focusing on actuarial studies right now. Yep. So I started in 2009. I'm currently in my 5th year at Macquarie University. The actuarial studies component only goes for 4 years of my degree. So I'm in my 5th year now, which means that I've gone through all the actuarial studies subjects for Macquarie Uni. Does that make sense? A little bit about me. I'm Andrew Lee, graduated in 2008, and I achieved a UAI, not an ATAR, I'm pretty old now, UAI of 98, and I went to a public school. So I didn't get ducks at my school, but you know, I was pretty close. Yeah. So yeah, I go to Macquarie Uni, combined law degree. I also work at Matrix during my spare time as a business analyst, which is responsible for strategy, marketing, finance, a bit of everything really. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. So let's get started. Okay. So what is an actuary? Some of you might be here because all the other rooms are full, but for those of you who don't know, actuarial studies is a commerce major. It's basically a person who specializes in mathematics and statistics, and they help people decide if they should do a project or do an investment or something by analyzing what are the risks involved. So how do they analyze risk? They use mathematics and statistics. So where you would find an actuary is probably in an insurance company. That's the main form of finding an actuary. Because when you pay for a policy, there is a certain probability an accident will occur. So how much should you pay as a premium to the insurance company for you to be able to be given a certain amount back? So if you're insured for a policy for $1 million, how do you know that paying, $300 a year is enough, or $1,000 a year is enough? Or why should people be paying more just because they're under 25 and male compared to under 25 and female? Who determines all these things? It's an actuary. Actuary determines what is the likelihood of the accident occurring. If it's more likely, higher premium. Less likely, lower premium. That's just the more traditional field of where an actuary goes. But they can also go into investments, so they can look at stock markets, financial markets, and assess how much you can earn back from your investment. Okay? So generally, that is what an actuary is. Does anybody have any questions on what an actuary is so far? Okay, let's move on. So what do actuaries actually do? How do they assess risk? Yeah. They assess risk using mathematics and statistics. So before they can do that, they need lots and lots of data. They use data to determine whether or not something is going to occur, whether it's more likely or less likely. The types of maths they use are really, really difficult and really hard to understand. Yeah? And so I can't really tell you exactly what mathematics they use, but it's just really, really hard for you to understand. But actuaries at work, they actually don't do that much maths. They're mainly consulting or they're on the computer. They're more likely doing this on Excel or using a computer program, basically modeling financial data or like some accident data or mortality rates or something like that. So they're mainly using computer programs rather than this one. So this is what you probably do when you're at uni. You do all the maths and stuff. But when you're actually working, you don't need pen and paper. It's all just computer programs. So generally, actuaries are quite good at computers once they've started working because they'll be using computers a lot. Yep. So yeah, you mainly look like this in uni, looks like this at work. Yeah, I don't do that last one. Okay, next. So where do actuaries actually work? Well, it's more, I think they work in nearly every field. Private, public, government, even defense. They work basically everywhere. So I'll point out some of the companies that might be more well known to you. So Allianz Insurance, probably one of the biggest insurance companies next to AMP, GIO, ING. one of the big insurance companies. APRA is a governmental organization which is responsible for looking at other companies and if they follow regulations. Because APRA normally manages insurance companies, and insurance companies needs to maintain a certain amount of capital every year. So if they don't, let's say the capital amount is 10%. If they don't have 10% worth of capital in the bank, which is cash, if they don't have 10% worth of their things in cash, then they would be doing something illegal and fraudulent, because if they don't have at least that minimum capital, they cannot possibly pay out all the policies if they occurred. So APRA is the body responsible for regulating insurance companies, making sure they are fit and proper to actually deal insurance products. Okay? Then you have your big four banks: Commonwealth, ANZ, Westpac, what's the last one? NAB. Yeah, I always forget NAB. Oh yeah, Suncorp. That's what's their new slogan? The genuine alternative to the big four. Generally, if you're in a bank, where you would work in is the risk management sector. So you'll be looking at managing clients' portfolios, the bank's portfolios, because when the bank takes money from you people, basically they use that money to give it to someone else, a company for them to use and get a return back, or they invest it in the stock market or some kind of other investments. And who manages the risks involved? What happens if they lose the money? That's why they need risk analysts, such as actuaries or quantitative analysts. Yep, and that's what you would do in the banks. The other big four is the auditing firms. So that's Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, and Ernst & Young. I don't think I put Ernst & Young on there, but the big four auditing companies. The auditing companies, what they do is they look at a company's balance sheet. Do they have actually, I don't know about the balance sheet stuff, but the actuaries, what they do in those corporations is they look at investment projects. They act as consultants. So if a company wants to invest in a project, but they don't understand how much return they will get, they would approach one of these auditing companies and they'll tell them a bit about what risks are involved in their project and what they can expect to get as a return. And actuaries obviously go into UNSW, Macquarie Uni and ANU because they need to train other actuaries to do their job. There's not a lot of actuaries in Australia. There's only about 2,000 of us. It's very competitive because there aren't that many actuary jobs. Yeah? When an actuary doesn't get an actuary job, they go into the banks and the auditing firms and so on. So most actuaries try to get into the insurance companies, and Infinity is an actuarial consultant firm, so they try to go into Infinity or insurance company or something like that, because that's an actual actuary job. Whereas if they can't find an actuary job, they go into the big four or they go into the banks and so on. Yep. Oh, there's also another path actuary can go into is investment banking. Yeah, investment banking. So you have companies like Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, and Macquarie Group, and things like that, and they're responsible for basically mergers and acquisitions and investments and other stuff like that. So there's a type of field. So you can see that the fields are all commerce related, they're finance related, they're risk related. It's always got to do with something about money, time, and probability. Those are the three things that actuaries go into. So why should you become an actuary if you want to become an actuary? First thing, in the US, it has been rated second best job in 2012. If you're curious, the first best job was software engineering. So it's people who go into, Facebook, Google, software engineers. Second best job is actuary. And how they rated it was based on these four factors: their work environment, their stress, physical demand, and hiring outlook. Lower is better. Okay? So lower basically means they don't have a very bad work environment. They have a really good work environment because they're assessing negative factors. So when you have a lower number, it means it's better. Hiring outlook, you can see that it's very hard to get an actuary job. But don't worry, actuaries can go into the risk analysis, the investment portfolios, investment banking, all those other stuff I said before. So don't worry, many people employ actuaries, even if they're not in the traditional actuary role.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you get the chartered accountancy qualification?
No. Actuaries are accredited by the Institute of Actuaries Australia. So actuaries is different from accountants. Yep. Accountants basically look at your balance sheet, if you've got the right reconciliation, if you've got the right input, output, and so on, and cash flows. Whereas actuaries assess risk of investments, risks of your products, and so on. They help you make decisions, actuary, yep, using probability.
But they would have a good understanding of the financial statements and...
Yes, they would. They would learn all that in first year, so I don't know how much of them remember that. Well, I don't remember much of that, to be honest. Second thing, great pay. Actuaries are known for their really high pays. The graph I have here is based on a US company, but I'm just using this to illustrate that they have really high pays. So you can see that the first block is already at 200,000. Yeah? This starting off pay would be around 60 to 70K, and they will increase about 8K for every year. Later on, I'll tell you about how to become an actuary, and there are 3 parts to becoming an actuary. Each part you get is a big bump in salary. When you have all 3 parts, you have the biggest jump, and you generally earn around 200,000 and above. Yeah. So that's just a little bit about actuarial studies. Does anybody have any questions about what is an actuarial study, what is an actuary, where do they work, and so on?
Yes, you mentioned US data. What about Australian data?
Australian data, well, unfortunately, no company has gone and done a survey for for Australia. So I couldn't find any data on that. Yeah. Any other questions? But I can tell you that it's pretty high still. It's very consistent with US, but higher amounts, because that was US dollar amounts. In Australian dollars, it will be higher. Yep. Any other questions regarding actuary? None, then I'll move on to how to become an actuary, which is the hard part. Okay. First one is basically you have to get part 1s. Part 1s is basically your university degree. There's only 6 universities that are accredited to offer an actuarial degree. Okay? These 3 are in Sydney, Perth, Melbourne. Okay? So basically, if you want to get into actuarial studies, you should be looking at ANU, Macquarie University, or UNSW. I've listed the ATARs there. ANU is 95, Macquarie University is 96, and UNSW is 96.4. Now, I'm in Macquarie University, so mine's around 90. Yeah. What is the main difference between these 3 things? There's no difference, because if they are accredited by the Institute of Actuaries to teach an actuarial program, there is no difference in terms of the content, because the person who drafts the syllabus is the Institute of Actuaries. So if they are accredited, it means that it doesn't matter which uni you go to, you'll get the same qualifications. So don't think that UNSW is better than ANU or Macquarie is better than ANU or UNSW. They're all the same. So it's just a matter of preference of location. Do you prefer going to somewhere further, like Canberra? Or do you prefer going somewhere closer to Chatswood? Or do you prefer traveling 20 minutes by train and then 20 minutes by bus to go to UNSW? It's up to you. It's a personal preference. Remember that ATAR does not tell me how difficult the subject is. It is merely a measure of supply and demand. So 96 just means a lot of people want to get into actuarial studies at UNSW compared to Macquarie or ANU. Okay, so it doesn't mean UNSW offers a better actuarial program than other ones. To be honest, Macquarie is the one that offers the best actuarial program, and it's known to be the first uni in Australia to offer the actuarial degree. Yep. And it has many years of experience, has the greatest academic staff, and so that's why I choose Macquarie University over UNSW. Yep. It is difficult to get your part 1s because if you notice this, I've written you need to attain above credit for every subject that you do that is an actuarial subject. So above credit for you that are not in uni basically means over 65%. Okay? And that's raw mark. Raw mark. Does that surprise you? No. It's actually not easy to get over 65% in actuarial studies because the exams are very hard. I can tell you that now. So it might look like, hey, 65%. I get like 90% in my maths test in year 12 anyway. It's very, very different. Yeah? So above credit is actually a very hard thing to maintain. But most of the people who actually do actuarial studies are really good at maths, and they can maintain that above credit. Okay? The other unis are a lot harsher. You need to attain, basically this is distinction, 73% and above. Yeah? And this is also 70%. So these ones are distinction, and they're a lot harder to attain.
So do they drop out if they don't maintain that?
Yes, they do have to drop out, because if they don't attain credit, they cannot become an actuary. Yep.
How long is the course?
The course is 3 years for part ones. Okay? So 3-year course, 3-year course, 3-year course, but you can do an additional 4th year. The additional 4th year will cover part 2.
Sorry, for the part 1, the dropout, do you know the dropout rate?
Yes, I will get onto that when I get to my uni experience at Macquarie. Part 2. So there's, as I said before, there's 3 parts to becoming an actuary. Part 1's the easiest one out of all of them. Just basic finance, statistics, and so on. It's very easy compared to the other parts. Part 2, actuarial control cycle, is one of the harder ones, I must say. And it basically looks at the workflow of an actuary in insurance. It's not so much applicable to actuaries who go to banks or they go to the auditing firms or so on. It's more applicable to the ones who go into insurance. Yeah? But if you get your part 2s, it's a big jump in pay rise. You'll get at least over 100K if you get part 2s. And you can get it immediately if you do a 4th year. So if you get a good basically overall grade in your uni subjects, your uni will allow you to do the 4th year, which is an honours year. Yeah? Now, honours year is offered at all 3 of those unis, ANU, Macquarie, and UNSW. They're all the same, basically. Yeah, they're all the same, and those subjects are broken, and the actuarial control cycle is broken into 2 subjects you do in 4th year. So you do one in semester 1, you do one in semester 2. And the average for those subjects has to be distinction. So if you thought getting credit was hard, getting distinction is harder. It's not impossible, it's just hard. But don't worry, you can still become an actuary if you do part 1s, but you'll just be lower paying compared to those who have attained part 2. That's the reason why I did a combined degree instead, because if you do a combined degree, you're guaranteed that 4th year. If you don't get into honours, because different unis have different programs to get into honours. Some uni require you to just have, credit average, whereas others require you to have distinction average. So if you don't want to take the risk of getting, not getting distinction and not making it into 4th year, then I suggest you do a combined degree. Yeah? You can combine it with anything from arts to science to engineering. I combined it with law because I did want to be a lawyer before, but yeah. Except for Macquarie. Macquarie, you only need credit average. Yep. At Macquarie, they recently changed the 4th year program, and they split it into 3 subjects as opposed to 2. So you have to get credit in all 3 of those subjects as opposed to just 2 subjects. So part 2, big bump in pay. Part 3 is the biggest bump in pay. You can expect to get over 200,000, as I said before. Part 3 is even harder than part 2. Okay? I'll explain this graph. Basically, to get your part 4, you need to do one of these 4 rows. So you see the 4th row, there's only one thing. It means you have to do that one. In the first one, you can do any of these things to get your first part in part 3. There's 4 parts. You need to get one in each of these, and then do that one. Okay? Each module lasts for 15 weeks, which is exactly 1 semester of uni. So if you want to get part 3s, basically you have to do 2 years. It can be faster if you have a PhD already. You're a chartered accountant, you're a chartered finance person, or you did some UK one, which I'm not quite sure about that one. But these ones are generally more well-known, and most people get through it using these methods. It doesn't matter if you're not a chartered accountant or you don't have a PhD. What you can do is you just do the enterprise risk management course, or you can do any one of these courses as your part 1 as well. Okay? So generally, actuaries in part 3, they want to do the A part and the B part. Because when they do both of them, they are accredited by ASIC as a compliance regulator for that particular specialty. So if I was doing part 3 and I did life insurance, ASIC would recognize me as an accredited compliance officer for assessing life insurance related products. Okay? So there's 4 specialties. You can think of this as a doctor's specialty. So doctors, once they become doctors, they go into, GP, they go into surgery, they go into all these other specialty fields. This is for actuaries. Yep. So it takes a minimum 1.5 years. Generally, it takes people 2 years. Okay. Once you get, yep.
Do normally people working while they're doing this,
Yep.
or they normally finish everything before they go?
Normally they're working because each of these courses are like $1,000 something, and generally if you're working, then your company pays it for you and you don't have to use your own money, which is good, which is better, I think. And yeah, there's no rush to getting your part 3s anyway, although it's a big pay bump, but there's no rush. It's actually quite hard to pass it, part 3s. And then after you've done all 3 of your parts, you have to pay Institute of Actuary an extra $1,645 just to get the professionalism course. Yeah? Don't worry, again, your company pays it for you, so don't worry about that step. Okay? It's just a lot of money to become an actuary since you have to do part 1, part 2, part 3. If I go back to part 1, I mentioned that you have to do an accredited degree from these universities. The Institute of Actuary also offers their own exams for part 1. So if you didn't do an actuarial degree at one of these universities, if you just did a mathematics degree, a finance degree, or a statistics degree, you can still get part 1s. You don't go to the university, you go to the Institute of Actuaries website and you apply for an application to do the part 1 exam. So Institute of Actuaries offers an external exam for part 1s. So you don't need to go to uni to do an actuarial degree to get part 1 exemption. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions on that?
So when you get a degree, it's in maths.
Yeah.
So then what piece of paper you get if you just do external?
You get the Institute of Actuaries is the piece of paper. Unis don't offer a piece of paper that says you're a qualified actuary. Institute of Actuaries is the professional regulating body. Only their certificate matters. The uni certificate does not matter. So even if the uni says, hey, you have an actuarial degree certificate, if the Institute of Actuaries says, no, that is not from us, then you're not an actuary. So unis are not that important. It's the Institute of Actuaries. It's the regulating body that has the most authority. Okay? So even if you didn't do an actuarial degree, you can still become an actuary. You just need to be able to do the content. And I generally advise people who do, mathematics and statistics to go on to do this. But anybody can really do it if you can match the course. The course materials all provided by Institute of Actuaries. You just have to pay for it as well. Does anybody have any questions on becoming an actuary without doing an actuarial degree? Nope. Okay. So I want to move on to basically what I think about actuarial studies at Macquarie Uni. So basically, what is it like studying actuarial studies? Well, before I get to that, I want to just filter, I just want to give people a reality check on what is required to actually do actuarial studies. It's not a prerequisite, but it's recommended that you know this stuff. First thing, maths. Can't stress enough. Maths is really important for actuarial studies. You need to do at least Extension 2. And you can't do average at Extension 2. You've got to be good at Extension 2. You've got to be really good at Extension 2 to do actuarial studies. Although the maths you do in actuarial studies is different to Extension 2, if you can't do Extension 2 questions, you will never understand the actuarial questions. They're a lot harder than Extension 2. Okay? And generally, the main body of maths you use in actuarial studies is called statistics. And basically that looks at probability of things happening, analyzing data, and so on. A lot of my friends did first-year level statistics, and that's the subject they hated most. Everybody hates statistics in first year. So if you can't do statistics in first year, then you shouldn't be doing actuarial studies at all. Okay? Maths, very important. Finance. You've got to be good at finance. So I know in year 11 and year 12, there are maths questions that relate to finance, where you calculate annuities, bonds, and cash flows. If these are the most basic part of actuarial studies. So this is stuff you learn in first year. Okay? This is the easy stuff. It's not hard. This is the easy stuff. Next bit that's harder is probability, especially statistical probability. So if you remember from high school mathematics, combinatoric probability refers to combinations and permutations. So it's the questions that are asking you, if I arrange 5 people in a circle and John and Sue can't sit together, how many ways can they be arranged? Yes, it's those type of questions. And you're going to hate it if you don't like it now. It's a lot harder but you do learn methods to go about doing it. It's not impossible, but it's just harder. Bayesian probability refers to conditional probability. So it refers to probability theory, where you have probability of A and probability of B. What's the chance of both of them occurring? Then you would do the union as opposed to the intersection. Yeah, and the other stuff is conditional probability. I don't think you touch on that in high school when you do probability, but some teachers might do it just for fun. Yeah. Statistical probability is using data to generate models. Actually, let's go into that here. Statistics is where you use data to generate models, and those models can determine what the probability of something is happening. So if I know that, around 120 people attend Matrix Open Day every year, how can I be sure that I'll get at least 130 people next year? You would use statistics to tell me that. You would model how many people over the past few years, not just the 1 year. You look at past few years worth of data and you see if there's any trends and so on like that. Yeah, statistics, it sounds easy because in high school, the only statistics you learn is how do I calculate the mean? How do I calculate the median? What's the mode? And so on. That's statistics, but that's really, really basic statistics. When you do statistics at uni, it's basically calculus. Now, calculus is integration, differentiation, limits, and so on like that. It's a lot harder. It's more algebra than anything else when you get to uni. It's not plugging things in your calculator like, hey, I can calculate the average mean and so on. It's a lot harder. Regression, if you remember to my salary table, that's an example of regression. Regression is more commonly known as line of best fit in physics. But generally when you do line of best fit, you just put your ruler down and you go, hey, these few data points are over there, these few data points are over here, and you draw just a random line. Whereas in regression analysis, you draw the actual line of best fit. And ANOVA is analyzing the variance of a data set. So how spread out the data is, how the data changes, how different is it from the average, and so on. It's estimation techniques, basically. And then the other thing you learn is stochastic processes. Stochastic processes is a body of mathematics which deals with different states of a matter or different states of a particular problem. So, for example, life and death. So if I go into a hospital and I need to work out, how many beds do I need in the emergency ward? How many beds do I need in the ICU ward or whatever? You would use stochastic processes because you model how many people are coming in, how many people are getting sick and getting better, and then you say, hey, they've changed states. And then you work out the probability of them changing states to work out how many people are actually going to be using those wards. Yeah, you generally use that using Markov chains. Monte Carlo method helps solve it. Brownian motion deals with financial markets. So if you look at a stock market, you see that it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, and then up again. And then people want to, buy low, sell high. Brownian motion is the branch of mathematics that help us determine when should we buy and when should we sell. It tracks the trend. It doesn't do it very well, but it tries to. Black-Scholes equation does option pricing, and trading strategies refer to what's the best, how many puts should I buy, how many calls should I buy, and so on to make a profit. So stochastic processes, again, not not easy. The easiest one was financial mathematics. Statistics, probability, stochastic, those are the hard ones. Another easy one is economics. You've got to know economics because actuaries help others make decisions. Why do they have all this data? It's because they want to help businesses make the right decisions. And so they learn decision theory, game theory, and utility functions, which is a branch of economics, which tells you when should you make what decision using mathematics. Okay? So that's just a little bit about the maths involved in actuarial studies. Any questions up to this point? Okay, let's move on. So, first year, you should be aiming for at least 70% in all subjects. First year will be your easiest year. Okay? It will be your easiest year. And I can tell you that if you can't get over 70% in first year maths or first year statistics at any of those 3 unis, you should drop actuarial studies. That is the right thing to do. And that's what happens with most students. They think, hey, actuarial studies, I'm going to make a lot of money. Let me just go in. It's not that high of UAI. But then once they go in, they can't do the maths. And they're forced to drop it. Because if they continue, they know that they will not be a qualified actuary. So what happens if you pass all the subjects in uni? You get a degree saying, I did Bachelor of Actuary, but the Institute of Actuaries won't recognize your degree because you didn't get at least credit. So there's no point doing it anyway. So that's why they drop. Okay? These things in black, they're the ones that I have denoted as easy. You should be able to easily get distinction in them. Okay? These ones are the harder ones, and you have to try and get distinction in them. These ones you should be able to get distinctions quite easily. Okay? Because all commerce people do these 3 subjects, and this is just basic maths. These 3 subjects, all commerce people do it. So if you do commerce, you have to do these 3 subjects. So it should be relatively easy since it's not aimed for actuaries. Second year, the most important year of actuary, because this is where you learn all the maths to do the actuarial specific related models in third year. So second year actuarial studies, lot of content to remember, lots of distributions, lots of methods, lots of things you have to remember. And I think this picture really reflects it. Like you have a whole board full of things and you just can't possibly remember everything. Okay? Luckily, some unis acknowledge that there's too much to remember and actually allow you to take a cheat sheet into the exam. So basically what a cheat sheet is an A4 piece of paper. You can put as much information as you want on it, front and back, take it in. This tells you how hard the exam is. You can take a piece of paper in and they still don't care, doesn't it? I know they definitely do it at Macquarie Uni. I'm not sure if they do it at UNSW or ANU. Okay?
I guess the application is the difficult.
The difficult bit is the problem questions, yeah. Next. Oh yeah, it always stops here. Okay, third year. Third year is not learning about techniques anymore. It's not learning about techniques anymore. It's learning actual actuarial specific models and problems. So in part 3, in third year, what you're doing is you're applying the knowledge you learn in second year. Okay? So it's all those statistics and mathematics you learn in second year and you're applying it to actuarial related problems. This photo actually tells you a lot about what third year is like. Yeah, they tell you 2 + 2 is 4, but in the exam they ask you to calculate the mass of the sun. It's really not straightforward, the questions in third year. It's not textbook answers, and it's not just what you learn in class. You've got to use your knowledge, and you have to think outside the box. So the best bet to passing third year is to do past exam questions. Because the past exam questions are very similar to the exam you will be taking, as opposed to the tutorial you will be doing in class. Yeah. Four? Okay, fourth year. Fourth year is, as I said before, actuarial control cycle. Now, that's a very, very hard subject, but if you've gone up to third year and you still maintain a credit average, actuarial control cycle should be actually not too difficult, and you should be able to do it as long as you study all the workflows or the processes. There's no new calculations you have to learn. All the calculations you've learned in second year, third year. This is more about what it's really like to do actuary in the workforce, in insurance and so on. Okay? So it shouldn't be hard as long as you study hard. Okay? That's a little bit about studying actuarial studies. Does anybody have any questions for me at this point? Yep.
When you finish the 3 years degree,
Yep.
But your result is not as recognized by the
Institute, yep.
So what sort of job you can do?
You can still go to banks, you can still do analyst roles, financial analyst, risk analyst. You can still do those jobs, but if somebody does have an actuary degree and they do have an exemption, they're more likely to be employed. Yeah, so you can still get jobs, it's just harder to find them because you don't have an actual actuarial degree. Yeah.
So to do actuary, do you need 70% above in extension 2?
In extension 2, in extension 2, the mark average for extension 2 is actually 92.
Okay.
92. So HSC marks out of 100, the average for extension 2 is actually 92. So even getting 90 is just average because everybody who does extension 2 does well on their exam. To get a mark of around 90 to 92 for HSC extension 2, that's around 75% raw mark in your exam. Yeah. So you should be getting at least that for extension 2. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Yep.
Are most students female or male?
Both, male and female. Okay. I just want to show you a short video. I think we have time, right, Alison?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I just want to show you a video of what a type of problem that an actuarial might try to solve. Okay. Hope sound's working.
States. The context for this problem is the company Catch Me Running, a small online retailer of women's running shirts.
I'm Barbara Gary, and I am co-founder and part owner of Catch Me Running Company. We are a small women's running wear company based in Evergreen, Colorado, and we have been in operation for a couple of years. We started a couple of years ago with our idea, and we got it at the Salt Lake City Marathon. We were there running the race, and we were at the expo and noticed some other t-shirt vendors there. And there was one lady in particular who was selling lots of women's shirts. And in looking at those, we felt like her design could have been more appealing, and we felt like that we had something better to offer. We felt like that women wanted something a little more simple. They wanted something classy that made a statement, and we felt like that was something that we wanted to provide for females to do. To be a profitable thing for us to do and something that women would enjoy. And so we started our business from there. We began with hiring a graphic designer, and he made a logo for us. We did some designs for some shirts. We got a bunch of shirts and hired a silk screener and got shirts printed and started from there. We hit several different expos selling our shirts, and we felt like response was positive. People enjoyed the shirt. They really responded well to our design. But the problem with that being is that we weren't selling enough quantity. It was this kind of a hefty and a steep price that we paid for the entry fee. And with selling at the expo, we weren't selling enough to cover that fee. So we realized that a problem exists. We did also as well sell them off the internet and set up a website, and people could come on the website and place orders as well and order them. When we would get an order, we would, from our house, take the shirt, fulfill the order, put it in a box, take it to the post office, and mail it out. So we were truly a home-based operation business. We continue to do this, but still looking for ways to increase our sales and to be able to sell more and reach more people with that. We feel like we have a fabulous product. We have something that women want. Women really, when they do a sport that they enjoy, like running, women want to look good when they do something that they enjoy doing. And so we feel like we have a great design, we have a great product, we have what women want. Our challenge is just trying to figure out how the best way is to get it to the females and what strategy would work best for us to increase our sales and continue our product. That being said, in the future, we aren't limited just to shirts. We have thought about this, and we have a great other marketing ideas. We want to expand into visors, socks, running skirts, a whole line of apparel, not just limited to shirts. So we have the vision of what we want to do. We are just at the point where we need to figure out how the best way is to do that.
Suppose that Catch Me Running will consider.
Okay, so basically the problem here is that she has all these shirts, everybody likes their design, but nobody wants to buy it. So she's trying to promote her sales. And what this question is going to go through should she offer these shirts at 10% discount and 20% discount, and see which one will drive her sales up and earn her more profit. And now we're going to go to how an actuary would approach this problem using mathematics. Very quick. Yeah, just a minute.
The problem that we are solving in this video is determining for Catch Me Running company which of these marketing campaigns is best for them. Either no marketing campaign, 10% off and 20% off. In particular, whether or not by having one of these marketing campaigns, the probability of them selling a shirt will go up to the point where it offsets the decrease in the amount of money that they would make per sale.
So he's using Markov chains right now.
Matrix, and we partition it. And on the board here, we have the matrix for the case when we had no marketing campaign. So we partition it as follows, and we abstract this submatrix, which we call Q, which is our matrix of transition probabilities between the transient states. From that, we're able to get the fundamental matrix M. And in particular, we take the identity matrix, subtract off that submatrix Q, and take the inverse. And that gives me my matrix M, which is a matrix of the expected number of transitions into transient state J, given that you start in transient state I. In the context of this problem, it would be the expected number of times that, given in the past, you had purchased, for example, let's say one shirt, the expected number of times that you will purchase one shirt prior to not purchasing any more shirts from the company. So we get these fundamental matrices for each of these cases, and then we multiply them by the profit vector. And in particular, 0, 13, 26, and 39. So we multiply these together and sum it up, and we get 93.3. So that would be the profit off of no discount. For 10% off, note that the profit vector has gone down by $2 per shirt. Multiplying that by the probability matrix, or by the fundamental matrix, gives us 87.26, and for 20% off, 79.63. And so the profit is best having no marketing campaign, or the overall profit is greater for no marketing campaign than for either one of these marketing campaigns. So the choice would be for Catch Me Running to do none of the campaigns that they have proposed.
So what it's saying is doing just percentage discount is not enough for her to generate enough profit to drive her sales. So that he reached this decision using, Markov chains and mathematics to provide a more objective decision rather than just looking at, hey, this might happen. Whereas actuary tells you, even if this happens, it's not going to work. Okay? And that's basically the end of my speech. Does anybody have any questions? Yep, you can go to a job and you can do your Part 2s, Part 3s at the Institute of Actuaries, or they can stay for a 4th year to do Part 2s and then look for a job. Part 3s you can't do at uni. You have to do at Institute of Actuaries. Thank you for attending my seminar rather than 99.95. Thank you.